very warm welcome. You're watching Race to Power with me, Raisha Sehgal. On the show tonight, we will tell you how Chinese hackers may have stolen data from every American, which also includes the US President Donald Trump and the Vice President J.D. Vance. Also on the show from the United Kingdom, we will tell you about the country's Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, who has now resigned over a probe revealing that she underpaid property tax. What lies ahead in the United Kingdom, we'll also tell you about that on the show tonight. All right, so recent probe reports indicate that Chinese hackers, may have engaged in various cyber attacks targeting government and private entities worldwide. Well, the timing of this comes as it overlaps with US President Donald Trump's sit-down at the White House with America's top tech CEOs, while investments were also a big part of the conversation. Data security is the big question. Well, the report claimed that China has hacked into American power grids and companies for decades, stealing important files and intellectual property such as chip designs as it seeks to gain an edge over the US. Well, it targeted more than 80 countries, and experts say it may have stolen information from nearly every American. Well, Cynthia Kaiser, a former top official in the FBI's cyber division who oversaw investigations into the hacking, said, and I quote here, "I cannot imagine any American was spared given the breadth of the campaign." The most sweeping among the cyber attacks was by a group known as Salt Typhoon. Investigators linked the attack to at least 3 China-based technology firms, which are number 1, Xinchuan Zhoushan Network Technology. Then the second is Beijing Honao Tianjin Information Technology. And lastly, Sichuan Xinjiang Roji Network Technology. In a joint statement, the authorities from the United States, the UK, Germany, Italy, Finland and Spain, as well as others, found that the cyber criminals are targeting networks globally, including but not limited to telecommunications, government transportation, lodging, and even military infrastructure networks. Well, UK and the United States officials have described this attack by the Chinese hackers as unrestrained and also indiscriminate. In an unprecedented statement by all these countries, which also included the likes of Australia, Canada, Finland, Japan, South Korea, Germany, Italy, US and the United Kingdom as the signatories of this. Now, let's tell you what was the hackers' goal, the main objectives. Number 1, monitoring communications, and number 2, tracking physical movements. These were the 2 main goals of the Chinese hackers. Well, according to reports, among the targets were also phones used by prominent lawmakers and politicians in the United States of America, including the US President Donald Trump and the US Vice President J.D. Vance, which happened during their campaign last year. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, the top Democrat of the Senate Intelligence Committee, said that perhaps the hackers were able to listen in on the telephone conversation and also read unencrypted text messages. At the 2021 NATO summit in Brussels, allies also endorsed a comprehensive cyber defense policy that recognized that the impact of significant malicious cumulative cyber activities might, in certain circumstances, it could also be treated as an armed attack that could lead the North Atlantic Council to invoke Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty on a case-by-case basis. Now, the Article 5 establishes the principle of collective defense, stating that an armed attack against one member of NATO is considered as an attack against all. And to talk more on this, Susan Tehrani, our correspondent, is now joining us live from New York. Susan, get us the latest on this probe report, which claims that Chinese hackers tapped into the US President and the US Vice President's telephones as well.
Right. And as you rightly mentioned, this was during their presidential campaign. So President Trump was considered a former president back then, but J.D. Vance was a senator. So he is still a high-ranking politician, but they were able to do that. But nonetheless, most Americans would be concerned to know that the former FBI agent mentioned that almost anyone in the United States could have been hacked. Now, what were these Chinese hackers looking for? According to this report, the goal was to give Chinese officials capability to identify and track their targets, communications, and movements around the world. And while the United States was a major target, we see that 80 countries around the world were also targeted. Now, the question remains whether or not the United States is in a position now, despite the fact that it keeps, closing down different Chinese websites and different Chinese entities here in the United States, if it's in a position not only to prevent these cybersecurity attacks and hackings, but also the question remains whether or not China has advanced so much ahead of the United States and the UK, as the report notes, in cyber security technology at the end of the day. So a very important issue, and we're going to be hearing a lot more about it in the weeks and days to come.
Right, Susan. Thanks for getting us the latest on this. All right, New York City's mayoral contestant Zoran Mamdani has challenged the US president to a debate. The remark came in response to Mamdani's political rival Andrew Cuomo. On Thursday, Cuomo, who is an independent contestant, singled out Mamdani from 3 rivals, challenging the Democrat for 5 debates, 1 in each of the city's boroughs. Cuomo urged incumbent Mayor Eric Adams and Republican nominee Curtis Sliwa to drop out from the mayoral race, wanting the election to just be between him and Mamdani. But Mamdani went a step further while responding to Cuomo. The New York mayoral contestant, who is also a front-runner in the polls, has directly now challenged Trump for a debate. Taking a swipe at Cuomo, he said, and I quote him here, "Let's cut out the middleman. Why should I debate Donald Trump's puppet when I can debate Donald Trump himself," unquote. The US president has been fairly vocal of his disdain for Zoran Mamdani and has on several occasions called him a communist. Trump repeated these remarks on Thursday as well, while he hosted top tech CEOs for an event in the White House.
No, I don't like to see a communist become mayor, I will tell you that. And I don't think you can win unless you have one-on-one, because somehow he's gotten a little bit of a lead. I have no idea how that happened, but I'd prefer not to have a communist mayor of New York City. And, that's what he is based on his policy, if you look at his statements in the past. So I would like to see 2 people drop out and have it be one-on-one. And I think that's a race that could be won.
Well, on the other hand, Trump has shown support for Andrew Cuomo for the NYC mayoral race. Cuomo, however, has said that he will not accept any endorsement from the US president. The New York mayoral elections made headlines earlier this week when reports surfaced of Trump's advisors mulling an option to offer jobs to incumbent New York Mayor Eric Adams and Republican contestant Curtis Sliwa. However, Adams has denied any interest in the said job offer. The decision was being contemplated to reportedly clear the path for Andrew Cuomo and make New York elections a 2-person showdown after Trump backed Cuomo as the next mayor of New York City. All right, shifting our focus to the United Kingdom, where a political storm has erupted in the country after Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner has resigned amid a mounting tax scandal. Rayner, who is Prime Minister Keir Starmer's number 2 and also the Housing Secretary, has now stepped down after admitting that she underpaid stamp duty on purchase of a flat in Hove. Valued at £800,000, she had skipped stamp duty of £40,000 on this purchase. Reynard also used £160,000 from a trust set up for her specially abled son and then falsely classified her flat in South England as a primary residence when in reality it was her second residence. She initially claimed legal advice absolved her, but investigators and her legal team say otherwise. The case against Reynard says that she actually removed her name from the deeds of a separate property in her constituency, meaning that the new apartment is the only property she owns. Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who had refused to sack Reynard despite the clamour against her, has now written to her saying, and I quote here, "You will remain a major figure in our party." Prime Minister Starmer backed his deputy in Parliament on Wednesday, saying that he was proud to sit alongside her. Starmer faced perhaps tough questions about when he knew of the error. Her departure opens the door to a high-stakes cabinet reshuffle and a scramble for her successor. The move perhaps is now being seen as a blow to Labour's efforts to restore public trust and a warning that no political star is immune to scrutiny. UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves to stay in the post despite wider government reshuffle. And well, for more on this, Ollie Barrett is now joining us live from London. Hi, Ollie. What's the latest? How has the UK Prime Minister reacted? And also talk to us about the reshuffle at the top with Reynard's resignation.
Well, the UK Prime Minister's reaction is to say that he is sad to see Angela Rayner's career, for now at least, at the top of government end in this way. But he also says that he thinks she was right to resign when his ethics advisor came back with his findings, having investigated Angela Rayner's affairs and suggesting that she did indeed breach the so-called ministerial code. At that point, it was inevitable that Angela Rayner would have to go. If she hadn't resigned, Keir Starmer would absolutely have had to sack her at that point. Now, the opposition Conservatives say that Angela Rayner has finally gone from government. They say that Keir Starmer should have had more backbone and should have sacked her himself. It does, though, mean that the reshuffle that Keir Starmer is currently carrying out is significantly wider than it would otherwise have been. We were being told by government sources that the reshuffle could happen probably next week, but that it would probably be limited to junior governmental posts. Well, that has changed, partly because of Angela Rayner's departure. There is at least one big seat at the cabinet table that needs to be filled. We are hearing there may be some really major moves afoot, such as rumours that Yvette Cooper is going to be moved from the Home Secretary position, perhaps ending up in the Foreign Secretary position. That would mean, if it were true, that David Lammy would be leaving that major post in the UK government. This is a big blow to Labour as a government, the credibility of the Keir Starmer administration. It also means that Keir Starmer is deprived of a useful figure in Angela Rayner, who was considered to help him speak to parts of the electorate that he couldn't reach, but also speak to parts of the Labour Party that perhaps he found difficult to reach as well. This was a week in which Keir Starmer said his government was moving into phase 2, which was going to be all about delivery and showing the electorate that they are tackling the big issues and problems and challenges of the day. Well, phase 2 has eventually been overshadowed by the demise of Angela Rayner in terms of her positions in government and her position as the deputy leader of the Labour Party, and given her leader, Keir Starmer, a major political headache.
Right, Ollie. Thanks for getting us the latest from London. All right, moving on to other stories we're tracking on Race to Power for you tonight. Shifting our focus to France now. The country is just days away from a major political showdown. The confidence vote called by Prime Minister Francois Bayrou is scheduled to take place on September 8th, which is 3 days away from that. And it's a gamble that could cost him his job and plunge France into a political instability. If Bayrou wins the confidence vote, he will be a step closer to putting his controversial budget into action. But if he loses, which is the most likely scenario, France will be without a prime minister and a national budget for the third time in a year. Bayrou wants to slash public funding, 44 billion euros in spending to curb France's debt. The plan includes fewer public holidays and a freeze on spending increases. Bayrou insists sacrifices are necessary to secure France's future. But far-left parties say that he is driving the country into chaos. Justice Minister Gérald Darmanin warned that if the government falls, the stability of the Fifth Republic could be at risk. France has been deadlocked ever since President Emmanuel Macron's snap election backfired last year, leaving parliament split into three rival blocs: the left coalition, Macron centrists and the right-wing allies, and the far-right National Rally and its allies. Opposition far-left and far-right parties hold more than 320 seats in the 577-seat National Assembly, and Bayrou will have to secure the support of adversaries on the left and the right to pass his budget. However, both the far-right and the hard left have said that they will not back Prime Minister Bayrou, making his defeat near certain. This would leave Macron searching for his seventh prime minister since he came to power in 2017. Alternatively, Macron can also call in early elections at this point of time and seek a parliamentary majority, but there is no guarantee a vote would go in Macron's favor. And the president has said that he is against the idea. Monday's vote would ultimately decide the fate of Macron's France. Well, days after Thailand's constitutional court ousted Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra, the Thai parliament has confirmed right-wing tycoon, we are talking about Anutan Charnvirakul, as the country's next prime minister. Anutan won 311 votes, securing a comfortable majority of the 492 MPs in the National Assembly's lower house. His victory marks the end of few Thai parties' grip over Thailand's top office under the powerful Shinawatra dynasty. 58-year-old Anutan leads the Bumchai Thai Party and has previously served as the Deputy Prime Minister, Interior Minister and Health Minister of Thailand. A construction magnate and a staunch royalist there as well. He shot to fame globally when he delivered on a promise to legalize cannabis in 2022. In fact, Anutan and other Thai health officials were seen dancing ahead of a news conference in 2019 to unveil the first batch of cannabis oil for hospital distribution, which became a huge viral hit in the country. Anutan's Bumchai Thai Party is the third largest in parliament and receives support from the opposition People's Party, the largest political group there. Anutan has now vowed to dissolve parliament within 4 months and call for elections in the country. Once an office holder in Thaksin's party, Anutan was banned from political activity for 5 years when the party was dissolved in 2007. He returned as the leader of the centre-right Bumchai Thai Party, whose third place finish in 2023 was their best showing in any election. Anutan pulled the party out of the coalition with Paetongtarn's Pheu Thai Party after her leaked call with Cambodia's former leader Hun Sen.
I will never be a chance taker, but I will.
Shifting our focus to Argentina, there's a major political showdown raging in the country between the country's congressional lawmakers and President Javier Milei. Argentina's Congress has now taken a landmark step in its tussle with Milei over austerity measures. Lawmakers voted to overturn the president's veto on a bill that increased spending and protection for people with disabilities. As leaders voted on a critical policy there, thousands gathered outside the parliament, eagerly waiting for the vote result. Celebrations erupted as people learned that the bill has been passed, essentially bringing relief to the vulnerable community.
pusimos un límite a tanta crueldad.
We set a limit to so much cruelty, and for families in particular, it brings a bit of relief, because we don't know what's coming, but it gives us a small sense of peace to know that the therapeutic centres our children go to won't be shut down, that the rehabilitation centres will have the budget they need.
There are children who are already dying in their homes, but from other causes that have nothing to do with their diagnosis. It's basically due to neglect. So for us, having a pediatrician who can come every week, getting the supplies, getting the medication for the kids, this will obviously mean quality of life, and in our case, it will basically mean life itself.
Well, Argentina's president has vowed to keep fighting back to cut government spending across public sectors, which includes healthcare, which is already facing a crisis in the country.
If we can't override the vetoes, we will take them to court. And if we can't take them to court, we will cut spending elsewhere.
This is the first time that Argentina's Congress has overturned the veto during Milei's presidential term. The twist comes weeks ahead of a critical midterm elections, which will be held in October. Milei's party is in a minority in parliament, a situation that the libertarian leader will have to change to allow a clear passage for his policies. Well, Nepal has cracked down on a number of social media platforms, including Facebook, X, and even YouTube, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, Reddit, WhatsApp, and Snapchat. The Himalayan Kingdom's Ministry of Communications and Information Technology ordered the country's internet service providers to block access to 26 major social media platforms across the country. Now, Nepal's crackdown, it comes after the social media platforms failed to comply with the government's one-week deadline, that is, to register with authorities. Nepal's Supreme Court had issued a directive last month that requires all social media platforms to register with the authorities, purportedly to evaluate and monitor undesirable content. And that's following a cabinet meeting on August 25th. Which is 1 week deadline was issued by the ministry for all social media platforms to complete their registration in Nepal. The platforms that did not comply have now been banned until further notice. Besides registration with the government, the court order also stipulates the appointment of a local contact and compliance officer as well as a grievance redressal mechanism in Nepal. Platforms that went dark in Nepal include Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, YouTube, X, LinkedIn, Reddit, WhatsApp, Discord, Pinterest as well, Signal, Threads, WeChat, Quora, Tumblr, Clubhouse, and there's more to this list, Rumble, Linemo, Jalao, Sol, Hamro Patro, MI Video, and MI Wike 3. Not all apps have been stopped. The ones which are working are TikTok, Viber, WeTalk, Nimbus and Telegram, which have either registered or are in the procedure of registration, continuing to be available in Nepal. And for more on the social media crackdown there in Nepal, our correspondent Saloni Murarka has sent us this report.
Nepal has decided to gradually deactivate the social media platforms that are operating in the country without approval. This decision comes in line with the Supreme Court directive to regulate social media operating in the country without approval. Under the directive, all the platforms are supposed to register with the Ministry of Communication, secure a license within 3 months, renew the license every 3 years, and also appoint one contact person in the country. Many officials say that it was necessary for Nepal to bring some social media platforms to regulate them. However, many sections of the society have criticized this move and they say that it undermines the democracy and freedom of Nepal. Saloni Murarka for WION World is One in Kathmandu, Nepal.
All right, so first it was a Nobel Peace Prize and now The US president is well known for finding new ways to immortalize himself in history. In a post on X, Trump shared an AI video of his face with the landmark Mount Rushmore memorial in the backdrop. Is he hinting at that he should be made a part of the historic sculpture? Take a look. And with that, we slip into a very short break. You are watching WION The World. Stay tuned.